Welcome to Faith Fondue, a podcast featuring author and speaker Haley DeMaria and teacher and blogger Ann Strickers. Faith Fondue will feature a melting pot of topics, ignited by a flame, our faith, and guided by the Holy Spirit. It is the week of September 26th, the 26th week in Ordinary Time. The Irish are 4-0 after a thrilling win in Chicago, and the Giants are still the number one team in the National League, and my Orioles are still the last team in the American League. Good morning, Ann. How are you?
I'm good, Haley. You can't end on that little note for our intro. The maybe irrepressible Orioles, or I don't know. But yes, today we'll talk a little bit about the Notre Dame game that you were at yesterday and some special connections with Notre Dame swimmers. Talk a little bit about Ryder Cup. And I want to just talk about all that goes in and making any athletic contest happen. Just appreciation and perspective. We'll talk about the Memorial of St. Vincent de Paul, who's also the patron saint of my parish. And a little bit just following up from last week, thoughts on mental health and working through grief as we lose people we love. So Haley, you were in Chicago. What a great day. It was awesome.
It was awesome. It was a great day for Notre Dame fans. It was just a great family day for me personally. We got in Chicago late Friday night. We met up with our son James Saturday morning and some of his friends. They had driven in from South Bend. I think for any of us who have kids in college, it's just fun to see them. I didn't spend a whole lot of time with him. He didn't sit with us at the football game. He tailgated with us for a little bit, but then went off with his friends. But boy, those moments where you can just kind of watch and observe and just be in their presence, you just kind of soak it all in. So we had a great day. There were a number of alumni swimmers who came down. Some I swam with, some I didn't. And it's one of the things I know, and both you and I love about the Notre Dame family. It doesn't matter if you were classmates or not. There's just a connection. So we took a really fun picture, I think, of Notre Dame swimming alumni that spanned almost 2 decades of people who were there. So that was a fun way to start the day. And then the game was exciting. It was really close. It was tied going into the fourth quarter. For people who saw the final score of the game, 41-13, it did not look like a close game, but it really was until we got to that last quarter. And it was during that last quarter that I realized that 2 rows in front of us, and of course we're jumping around at that point, and I used that term specifically, jump around, because that was kind of a theme of the game.
Yeah, I noticed that.
We'll talk about that. It was really, really neat. That. Yeah, definitely, for sure. But I realized that right in front of us were 4 current Notre Dame swimmers, and I just loved that. I loved that connection. I loved talking to them. It was just, again, part of the Notre Dame family. They were excited, to meet a swimming alum. I was excited to meet them. I knew exactly who they were because I, of course, follow Notre Dame swimming. I think they were glad to know that people actually follow a sport, they said, besides football. Kind of like when you went and met with the women's golf team. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was everything I love about Notre Dame. It was Notre Dame family. It was my own family. And of course, the game was pretty exciting. So yeah, just a great day all around.
So a couple questions. I don't know, number one, there was a lot of on sports talk radio, people didn't understand why they would have that game at Soldier Field when, Wisconsin has a great stadium in Madison. We have a great stadium. My junior year, your senior year, we started a game. We played Northwestern at Soldier Field, and it's super historic, and the Bears play there. So I kind of get that. But what would you say in response to those sports talk radio people?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw a lot of those comments after the game yesterday. And, it's a great question, and it's a valid question. What I can tell you, or at least from what I know and what I hear, the players really love playing in NFL venues. That's a really cool thing for them. Sure. So, of course, we were supposed to play Wisconsin at Lambeau Field last year. That's an iconic stadium. A lot of these players are not going to play in the NFL.
Yeah.
So to play in a professional venue is is exciting for them. So
Yeah.
I think like everything Notre Dame does, it's about the player experience, it's about the student
Mhm.
athlete experience, and
Yeah.
it is neat even for many of us who are huge college football fans, and for some who maybe aren't NFL fans, to go to those iconic stadiums. I think many of us were really bummed that the game at Lambeau Field last year was canceled. So I think it's about the players. They
Yeah.
get to play in an
Yeah.
NFL stadium, which is
Right.
something that actually not a lot of college players get to do.
Right.
But I hear, there's something neat about,
Yeah.
of course, we love Notre Dame Stadium as well.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And then, I just think red shows up on a screen a little better than green, because the fans were like, there's so much more red, but I don't know. Notre Dame seemed pretty loud, seemed really in. So green looks great, I think.
So I love green, but here's, this is kind of the ongoing issue that I think Notre Dame has, and I love the Irish Wear Green game that they hosted last week. We don't have a signature color. So
Yeah.
I would say the stadium was pretty well split 50-50. The Irish were really well represented. But when everybody, or, let's say 95% of the Wisconsin fans are wearing red, and Notre Dame is split between green, blue, white, it doesn't show up as well.
Yep.
So we showed
Yeah.
up in numbers, and we showed up, I believe, in volume, but we just don't show up on TV as well in color. But one of the neat things for me, going back to this, the whole jump around thing. One of the things we love about Notre Dame are the traditions and the history. And it's really fun as a college football fan to see those traditions at other schools. It made me a little nervous. So between the third and the fourth quarter, I don't know if they showed it on TV. If you can find it on social media, it's pretty cool to watch. The Wisconsin band plays the song "Jump Around," and I think that's the name of the song. I don't know, but I think everybody knows what it is.
Right.
And
Came out while we were students.
the
Yeah.
entire section, half of the stadium, everybody wearing red was jumping around, and
That's cool.
it was really cool to see.
Yeah.
Of course, we do the is it the 1812
Yeah. Overture.
overture?
Yep.
Yes.
Mhm.
Which is neat. That's kind of our tradition. I will say
With the BK.
the right the jump around is really pumps you up, and so for a
Yeah.
lot of Notre Dame fans, it made us pretty nervous. It was again tie game going into the fourth quarter. Wisconsin was driving; they were down, I think, in the red zone. Potentially getting ready to score. That jump around pumped them up. I think
Yeah.
it made an impact. Now, fortunately, they just got a field goal, and we ran the kickoff back, and it pretty much we did our own jumping around, as we said, during the
Yeah.
fourth quarter. But
Yeah.
again, as a college football fan, just fun to see that,
Sure.
and fun to be a part of it.
Yeah,
And then, of course,
that's
fun
great.
to win. Yeah.
Yeah, it's House of Pain, it's the band. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun to see, quote unquote Notre Dame celebrities. So I have to say I envy him. So first of all, my boss is from Chicago and Notre Dame alum, and he was like, yeah. At one point, I was going to try to go home this weekend, back home, because then I could watch Ryder Cup and catch the Notre Dame game. And it seems that Pat Connaughton was able to do both of those because Ryder Cup's taking place in Whistling Straits, which is Kohler, Wisconsin, which is a very drivable distance. So I have to say it was hard to watch both, and I was watching more golf than football. But then the game got really good and exciting, so you can lean that way. And golf was going all day. Because it's a little confusing for people who maybe don't necessarily watch golf regularly. It's a special format for Ryder Cup, USA versus Europe, and you have 4-ball in play, and then you have foursomes, and then you have like 1-to-1. So you might be thinking, I just saw Jordan Spieth this morning, he's playing this afternoon, and there's different things that go on, but it's so emotional, it's so exciting. A friend of mine who said he's been to every major sporting event says the Ryder Cup is the most exciting thing he's been to. I don't know about that because I don't personally find golf is not a great spectator sport. With football or baseball, you can see the action unfold and the plays. With golf, it's just hard, to get a full sense of everything going on, but you definitely feel it because of the the sound and the roars of the crowd. And there's a lot of drama because, the way that you have to play. And then when you get towards the hole, you can concede the hole, you can give the hole to a player, knowing that they'll make the putt or whatnot. So yeah, yesterday there was this antic. Bryson DeChambeau was not given the putt. He makes the putt. He lays down his putter to show the distance and then walks away, and stuff like that is so hilarious. And people who might not get it are offended. But at the same time, that happened to me in a tournament and the woman didn't give me the putt. And then she's from a communist country. So I'm thinking to myself, we would joke among us, my teammates were like, well, it's because she's from a communist country. She doesn't give away anything. And then psychologically, when you make the putt, it's such a, reaffirming moment. So all of those emotions in a sport there, you're supposed to be very controlled. It's very different because you're allowed to be loud and kind of showy, and you're kind of expected to be that way. So seems like a good weekend in the Midwest overall. And the weather looked great too, I have to say.
The weather was perfect. Just one of those 60-degree blue skies, sunny days.
Truly fall, right? We started
Truly fall.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
right. Yeah, so great day for football, great day for golf.
That's awesome.
I one of these days, one of these years, and I will try my best to get hooked on golf. I can't imagine I would ever watch a golf match on TV over a football game. So I really do love and admire your passion for that. There's nothing better than a passionate sports fan.
You kind of wonder, on the collegiate level, all that goes on, or professional level, all that goes on to make a game happen. But on Friday night, we call it Friday Night Lights at St. Francis. We hosted another home game. We played St. Ignatius, where I used to work. So my job was to work the St. Ignatius sideline, which my boss was joking, that's not work at all. It's probably the best job. But, and it was great. It was a great game. I wished, so St. Francis won 33-0. And I wish they had I wish for St. Ignatius, that they would have had some points on the board. Just, it is affirming, just to answer, right, the scores. But we had to take everything down. And, once again, I know this, we all know this because I've done this, but I don't think I've actually worked a football game toward the very end. Usually I go home at some point. All that goes on to make a high school football game happen. We're talking everything from the pylons to removing those things to the padding on the, the uprights, so to speak, everything that you put up, take down. It's incredible. It is really a lot. And, that doesn't happen without people working hard and doing what they need to do. So I guess I'd just for anyone, myself included, athletes, parents, coaches, just to think about in gratitude for the people who make all of our games really go. It takes a small army. It really does. So I was just kind of humbled by that. And afterwards, I was the boys from St. Ignatius were eating, in the back, and it's kind of cool. They all change into the same sweatsuit. It looks really good. They come in with ties on and button-down shirts and a varsity jacket. And our boys at St. Francis wear their jerseys in class, but at St. Ignatius, they would wear ties. And I just think that's really, I think both are, fun or special. But afterwards, the coach, I've known him for a long time. I coached with his wife. And I just, it's hard. It's hard to take that beating. And I just wanted to give him a fist pump, and he's like, no way. And he gave me a hug. And it was so nice because, that it means a lot. It means a lot when I know what it's like to just lose and struggle. And he's like, reach out to Liz, which of course I will. I love his wife. She's a great coach. They're a really special family. So,
yeah, what a neat game for you. What a I don't want to say a hard game, but when there's meaning on both sides of the teams, of course you want St. Francis to win. That's where your current place, but you don't want St. Ignatius to lose. It's a little bit how I feel about the Navy Notre Dame games. I don't ever want Navy to lose, but I always want Notre Dame to win. But you make a really good point. So many of us love sports, whether we're watching our kids play even, like a rec soccer league that takes place every Saturday morning across, the United States on many different fields, or whether it's high school or club games, or, even at the collegiate level, thinking of the Shamrock Series. There's a woman in the athletic department who I know who, one of her jobs is to put that on, and, all of the theming and all of the logistics, going back to our question, why play at an NFL stadium when we have iconic college stadiums? Well, that's a great question, because it's a lot more work to put on an event somewhere else than not at home. Right. So that's something that is really a great point for us to think about and remember. Whatever level of sports we're watching, we love watching sports, but that doesn't happen without an army of people. And in a world where so many jobs are taken over by computers and can be done, without human manpower, some of the things we love the most only take place because of human manpower. So that's something for us to remember, and I think be really grateful for as well.
I mean, one of the last things we did, Haley, was turn off the lights. Yeah. And I have to learn, my job where that is. It's in a special room. Like, they're not just right there where you want them, right? Like, somebody turns them on and somebody turns them off.
Right.
And great point with automation too. I mean, it kind of comes full circle with Ryder Cup because it's Kohler, Wisconsin. And one of the great things when I went there is we got to see the factory and we saw like the robotics piece of it. And then, it still needs human beings to oversee some of the robotics, but it's pretty humbling to see a bathtub like connected to a conveyor belt, like hanging above you and being moved, like men in particular used to carry that. And like the guy who gave us the tour was quote unquote a grinder. And it's like this instrument that uses sand and water to like make, the ceramic for your toilet or your, bathtub smooth. And that was somebody's job for years and how hard they worked. And now it's been outsourced, which, allows human beings to do other things. But yes, absolutely. Somebody still has to turn the lights on and off. The conveyor belt on and off.
Well, and I'm sure those players were very grateful that you were there to do that. And if not,
I'll remind them. Yeah. I don't know that I don't know that I would have been. I mean, honestly.
No, all the sporting events I've been to, you're right. It's we don't always think about that.
Somebody's putting the chlorine in the pool, Haley. Somebody is putting the chlorine, and they're testing it, right? Yeah. pH balance. Yeah.
So moving on to our spiritual stew this week, it's interesting. Mine comes from a gospel, and I've diverted a little bit from true gospel readings, even though our spiritual stew technically, is always coming from the gospel. But I noticed that tomorrow is the memorial of St. Vincent de Paul. And of course, I think that's a name that a lot of people know, whether they are Catholic or not, probably whether they're even Christian or not. I think St. Vincent de Paul is just a name that's kind of made itself mainstream, which I love. But even myself had to, kind of do a little reading and investigating and educating myself about who he was, even though I'm pretty familiar, as many people are, with just his name. But the gospel for tomorrow, which is his memorial, which is different than his feast day. So I had to read about the difference of that. But the gospel tomorrow just brought up something that kind of made me laugh. It's kind of a universal theme, but it starts off, and it's just the first sentence of it is, and I can post, the gospel. It's Luke 9:46-50. But it starts off that says, an argument arose among the disciples about which of them was the greatest. And it made me laugh. Who of us that either has multiple children or has siblings has not ever had that conversation? Who's the best? Who do mom and dad like the most? Who's mom's favorite? Who's dad's favorite? And it's kind of a silly argument, so to speak, a kind of a funny discussion. So the fact that the disciples had that same kind of thought and discussion really made me laugh. This is a universal topic. Who's the best? Who's the greatest? Who does Jesus like the most, right? Who does mom and dad like the most? Well, of course, mom and dad don't love any children more than the other. Do my mom and I have similar interests that perhaps we share more common interests in? Yes, maybe. Do my father and my brother have a special connection because it's father and son? Absolutely. Do my mom and my sister both have a love of the beach, that connects them in a different way? Of course. Do they love any of us differently or more? No. So I thought it was kind of interesting that the disciples had this own discussion amongst themselves, right? And it also speaks to, I think, a theme that has become more of a common term lately, but just that sense of belonging. And that can mean different things to different people. But really, what I think it's saying is, how do we belong? How are we cared for? How do we fit into this group? Because we want to. And I think, it goes back to, a common theme. We certainly talked about it last week. And, it's a big thing for me as well. But that sense of community, who are we in a part of community? How do we, how do we belong to different communities? What does that mean to have that sense of belonging? So I'd like to think that, when we're all talking about who does mom and dad like more, who's the favorite, as the disciples are talking with Jesus or just talking amongst themselves, arguing amongst themselves, arguing is the word that's used. Really, they wanted to belong. They wanted to be part of something. And I think that's something that we all strive to do is to be part of something bigger than ourselves, to create that sense of belonging. Maybe we don't need to be the greatest disciple or the favorite of the child, but we do just want to be a part of it. So I'm not necessarily sure how that factors into, the memorial of St. Vincent de Paul, but he was such, his name is synonymous with charity. There are so many, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul and of giving and of selflessness and of creating a community for people who might not have one otherwise. And I think that was really where I read into, how it takes place. I'm not sure. I think one of the things that my takeaways is to look and see, with tomorrow being the memorial of St. Vincent de Paul, are there specific biblical readings that go with that day, or is it just kind of happenstance that it follows along the liturgical calendar? So I'm going to do a little diving into that. I don't know the answer, but I thought it was interesting that that sense of belonging, really crosses over from the disciples into, St. Vincent de Paul and his great works of charity.
Yeah. Well, I think it's appropriate because you said that this year you want to spend more time with the saints. So it's here's some evidence of that. Well done. That continued, right, kind of personal goal. I guess I had a lot of feast days. I mean, for many saints, their feast day is their death date or their birth date. So that'd be, I don't know. That's interesting, Haley, about the memorial versus feast day. I mean, obviously this must have been the day he died. That's why there's the memorial piece, right?
So he actually died on September 23rd.
Okay.
Because I looked that up too. So it must, but so I probably need to do a little more investigating in that. But it is not his feast day. It is his memorial day. So, again, so much more for me to learn.
Right. Fun fact about September 23rd. Is that it's Bruce Springsteen's birthday. And that's a big day because he's the boss. And one day I walked into class and I said to my colleague, it's the boss's birthday. And he's like, oh, wow. And I was like, so excited. And I'm like, he's 60 years old. And he's like, no, he's 40. And I was like, no, haha. Like he's acting like he's 40. He has so much energy as a rock star. And we realized we were talking about two different people. He's like, oh, you mean the boss, the principal. So Patrick Ruff, who's one of my favorite people. So I don't know about our listeners or you, but I'm not great with birthdays. But that birthday I always get because I just, for some reason, 9/23 sticks out in my mind. But that's interesting. Another great person, St. Vincent de Paul. Patrick Ruff, I think, is a pretty holy person. So I'll include him in there, but it was really special. So that's my parish, and we mentioned it at Mass this morning that it's his memorial. The priest, the presider, my roommate got married there, and her husband is from France, and and he's Jewish. So I don't know what that was like for his family to have gone through this, Catholic ceremony. But the priest, like, of course, being kind of a bridge, noted that Saint Vincent de Paul was from France, and mentioned that to Giles's, and I say it with American Jules, or Giles, his family who came in from France. So just trying to, again, make those social connections, and they knew who he was. To your point, like, people beyond, right? Just, everyday people kind of know who he is. But
Right.
it's funny because in John's gospel, he declares himself the favorite, the beloved. So we have that going on, and there's always that person in a family or group. But, in a way, it's kind of like the no-win question. Like, it is so human to want to know who's the greatest.
Right.
But
Right.
it's also like, okay, well, what if somebody is the greatest? Okay, like, where do we go with that? But it's funny because this week for prayer, in leading prayer, I asked my students, who is the GOAT? And I said, this is so common in sports, but I want you to think of a spiritual GOAT. So that was our kind of journal question. And then, what's your criteria and why? And then when I was in Spain on this pilgrimage, the Jesuit priest who led it was trying to convince us why Ignatius of Loyola was the GOAT. And I said, with all due respect, Padre, like, it's actually not even a question. Like, it's Our Lady. She is the GOAT. And I said, you know what? Ignatius would agree. He loved Mary. So I just taught, like, it's fun to teach, like, some, like, historical facts about Mary, in addition, just kind of like her spiritual side, but like, that she was Palestinian, that she was a devout Jew. She was probably 14. She had family, like, we know that through the gospel. Her cousin Elizabeth in the Hill Country. John the Baptist was her cousin's child. Joseph was probably a widower. Like, she married somebody older. She could have been stoned because she was with child without being pregnant, and I show kind of a realistic picture of what Mary of Nazareth, because if it's Jesus of Nazareth, like, what she would have looked like. And then I talk about her spiritual greatness, saying yes, enduring misunderstandings, just to even be at the foot of the cross, or to see your child on the way to their death, right?
Oh, gosh, yes.
There, right? Like, her strength, and how so many mothers would do that as well, right? Just the strength of women. She models that for us, and she's the original, disciple. She's number one. So, in the in the goatness, is that a word? In the greatest of all timeness, we can put that one to bed.
So I love that. And, I love my job that I do right now at St. Anne's, but at some point I have got to teach a class called Sports and Spirituality, and I'm going to pick your brain on it, because what a great exercise to talk about, to have to write about, the GOAT of spirituality. I chuckled a little bit when you mentioned that John wrote that he thought he was the greatest, because, of course, my understanding is that he wrote his gospel, years after the other three gospels. So easy for him to say that when perhaps the rest of them aren't around or aren't alive, which is so typical of humans to do, right? I'm the greatest because no one's around to dispute that. Right. But of course, we also know from the Bible that, in referring to who Jesus loved the most, it's also, Mary Magdalene. So kind of a fun question to debate, but I would agree with you. I think of Mary all the time, and who she was and what she gave of herself, and her beliefs. But kind of a fun discussion. Right.
So people can chew on that this week.
Yeah.
Maybe if they have another choice for their spiritual goat.
Yeah.
Mary,
so we'll give Mary number one, and then it's all silly, who are we ranking? But I think,
and that's the point, right?
Yes,
like,
yes.
Okay. So say, Matthias is the goat, like, what do we do with that? So.
Yeah. But, a fun thing to talk about and think about. And I think anytime, again, that we can bring our faith into kind of the mainstream world and make it applicable to young people or sports fans, I think that's just a great outreach that is important for all of us to just live our faith in a mainstream world. And certainly St. Vincent de Paul was able to do that, right? Whether it was him or his legacy, for sure. he has carried that out in a way that has served millions of people, and in a very charitable way. So we will pray for all of for the memorial of St. Vincent de Paul this week. I would like to also continue to pray for those who are not only those who are struggling from mental health issues, but also for a greater awareness and understanding and education of mental health. I think, more and more we're hearing about those struggles, and there is a greater understanding, but there's so much more work to be done. So I hope we can continue to help those who are struggling with mental health, and also just create that greater understanding. And as we move forward this week, we will, of course, I'll keep all of our listeners in our prayers as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think my takeaway, just in light of St. Vincent de Paul, and like you said, the emphasis on charity, it made me think, like last week I was with a friend, and he gave this organization, we were at a walk, and they help people with physical disabilities, and like specifically Down syndrome, they employ them. And he gave the woman $50, and I may have talked about this, but like the woman appreciated it so much. And then I actually, when we were coaching this week, I said, that was such a great moment to see how much she appreciated it. When charity is given, it is like, I keep thinking this word sweet, and I don't like the word sweet, like when someone's described as sweet, but like, meaning it's such a tender, right, and appreciated moment. So I told him that, and he's like, she actually wrote me a thank you note. Aww. And I was like, of course she did, because of course she did. She was so appreciative in the moment, and she followed up with it. So real charity, when we extend it to others, whether or not, it's sweet. It is really a wonderful thing to witness, but also to obviously extend. So I'll look to St. Vincent de Paul's example for that. And, he, at our parish, the St. Vincent de Paul program gives fresh fruits and vegetables to families. And that's, so important for health and well-being. So I love that program, but I'll just try to think about ways that I can extend charity this week to anyone in need.
Yeah. And charity,
mental health or not.
And charity that is, without expectation, right? To just give freely and truly of our hearts, without expecting that thank you note, even as much as that thank you note is appreciated. And, I'm a big proponent of thank you notes. Yeah. I really am. But I also know that, giving freely, true charity means giving 100% with zero expectation of return. And that's not always easy for some people. So to keep that in mind as we move forward through the week as well.
Okay. So. All right. Well, we have our task.
We do.
Thank you for commissioning us.
We will keep our fingers crossed for the United States and the Ryder Cup, and
get it done.
And
USA,
we will also and we'll also keep in mind, as I attend even the water polo matches this week, all those and what it takes to
exactly
to put those games together.
In today's flag football game, or not flag? It's not flag.
Oh no, it's full on tackle.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Anne. Have a great week.
Okay. You too, Haley.